What's up, Armor Down? How are you? Hope you slept well. Hope you had a nice weekend. We're back at it. Today, I want to talk about the predictive mind. The predictive mind. So if we go back to the beginning of this kind of training series, which started several months ago, we grounded the Four Bells practice in the philosophical and now kind of capitalistic underpinnings of what our brains do. And what our brains do is something called predictive processing. So one way to think about this is that your brain has in its capacity the ability to give your being an external experience by assessing and predicting what's around you based off of past understandings. And then as you move through time, this predictive process updates itself based on the feedback of your senses. Okay. So in one sense, there's this experience of reality being generated. The other sense is this experience being mitigated by your senses. Okay. So there's this outward and then there's this inward. Okay. The reason why we have chosen to ground the Four Bells practice within the predictive processing model of the human brain is not just because it correlates to how many of the greatest Zen, Chan, Buddhist, Hindu, all these practices in the East see this construction of reality as a kind of a projection. Okay. So it's based off of that. There's this time-honored element, but also because, especially in the West, this predictive processing model is being used by autonomous vehicle developers to train autonomous vehicles. So we're using this foundation, not just haphazardly, but we're using this foundation as a stepping stone for explaining what our minds do and how to basically hack into that reality, hack into that gear. This is our gear, the gear of being. Hack into the gear of being and use the practice of mindfulness to become more resilient and more open-hearted. So that's why we're here. That's why we practice. We practice this understanding. We practice that our wisdom is based off of these fundamental kind of realities. And each time we unpack those realities and look at them a little bit more clearly, we have a greater opportunity to participate with our life in a more skillful way. So that's how we got to here, right? And so the focus today is on that thing that exists within the brain, within the being, which is the mind. So the mind and the brain are distinct. The brain is the underpinnings of the mind, but the mind materializes out of the brain. Now, inside of a particular moment, a moment of awe, a moment of wonder, a moment of presence, the mind and the brain and the body and the being are all melded into oneness, unity. That oneness can be seen in the kind of just behavior of children. So as young children, their capacity of self-identity, separation is not there. It's just the experience. And so you watch kids, you watch how they play, you watch how they find joy in things, you watch how they become mesmerized by things, awe and wonder. That's the predictive processing of the brain and the underdevelopment of the mind just being. Okay? It's right there. Now, as we grow and get older and our identities begin to form, we begin to distinguish between ourselves, the self, the identity, and everything else. I am me, and that is that. Okay? That process is influenced by our culture, by our training, by our parents, by our traumas, and by our body, which is kind of the body and the brain are kind of this incredible thing. Our body having intelligence too. So our body remembers things. Our body reminds us of things through feelings and sensations. So all these pieces, right, are starting to be built. Okay. We've got culture influences. We've got the fundamentals of our gear. We've got this identity. We've got this thing called mind. And then the mind starts to really develop, right? It starts to really kind of become a thing of it's a thing within itself, right? And there's layers to the mind. I won't go into all that. But the identity, the story of the mind, the story of the individual starts to really take shape. And the story of the individual has a past, right? Where you're from, what your name is, your address, your social security number, how many times you pay taxes, blah, 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 your past, but it also is your future. What am I going to be with my life? How is my life going to go? What planning for this, planning for that? The American dream, this projection into the future. If I achieve X, then I'll be this, right? So the predictive brain, okay, facilitates this coming of the mind, this coming of identities, coming of story. And then the story also has a predictive quality to it. So that's what leads us up to this kind of idea of the predictive mind. Okay. The predictive mind is the story of self, and the story of self is always oriented around the past, how the story of self became, and the future, what the story of self does or needs. Okay. So the predictive mind is always moving from the way the future should be and the way it was. Now, because the way it should be and the way it was are organized by the individual story, the individual story that I can create, that you can create, that anyone who's not aware of this reality, that anyone can create, can be manipulated and told in any way they want, in any way you want. It is a story that can be told in any way to justify what that person believes to be the truth. You can make up anything. So here's an example. Over the past weekend, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, the Virginia War Memorial had a program called the Virginia Forum. And we prepared for this program, which is a 3-day kind of hosting of 125 people. We prepared for this program for months. One of the realities that we faced is in the preparation, we managed our preparation as much as we could in order to facilitate a program experience for those that came that was smooth and helpful and friendly and all these other kind of things. We tried to make our on-ramp and then the experience as smooth as possible. Okay. So we did all this preparation, we divvied up the responsibilities, we made plans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We get to the forum experience. Throughout the 3 days, we as a team adapt to the challenges of the moment. We really kind of flow and adapt to each other. And every plan that we had ended up being not correct, And ultimately, what we ended up doing was adapting, coming together as a team. And inside the moment of the forum, inside of moments of crisis, inside the forum, all the team kind of came together, handled the situation appropriately in this kind of a flow kind of thing. Like, you got 5 minutes to fix a computer problem. What are you going to do? It's no longer planning. It's assess the situation, get inside the situation, do it, boom, move on, right? Fast, okay? Get through the forum. Comments from the forum, we wanted for nothing. It was fantastic. Everything about it was wonderful, okay? Come to the other side of the forum. Come to the next day after the forum is over. Everybody's back at work. One of the conversations that we've been having is that the reason the forum, instead of talking about the forum as the kind of the process of adapting and learning how to operate together, the conversation was around how the planning wasn't good enough. And if the planning for the forum had been good enough, then the instances in the forum where the plans didn't match the reality would have matched the reality. So here's A. A is we have a forum coming up. We know A. Okay, we know when the date of forum is. Thinking A. All right. Thinking B is the outcome of the forum being ideal. We don't know how that's going to go, but we know A. Okay. So B happens. B happens a particular way that changes the way we thought how B was going to happen. And because we didn't know how this was going to happen, because this was a mystery, the conversation that we had was a recreation of the past in order to project that into the future that didn't happen would have happened. So it's like, here's A, here's what we knew, here's B. And when we had A, we didn't know what B was going to be. Here's B. B happens. Because B rendered all the plans that we made for A useless, the way to handle the situation for the predictive mind was to disown what actually happened, disown B, claim that A wasn't planned enough, and then say, if A was planned enough, then B would have been perfect. So instead of addressing B as it is, the predictive mind recreates A, projects a false future up onto the realm of conversation and says, B is inconsequential. The real focus is on the fact that the mistakes that we made at A that meant that it didn't work out at B was we didn't have enough planning. And if we had enough planning, we would have overcome the challenges that we faced in B prior to B. It's a fascinating phenomenon to watch. It's a fascinating thing to see, because what it is it's a creation. We create our reality based off of what we're comfortable with, and we can totally create distance between reality and simply generate a story and make that story fit our predictions. So instead of learning, instead of growing, instead of adapting, instead of seeing things the way they are, we can create a narrative that renders the past and the future obsolete. It renders the reality of the moments obsolete, and then simply overlays a story. And it's incredible to see. It's incredible to participate with. It's incredible to watch in real time. I was sitting in a conversation with some colleagues, and I was listening to them describe not what happened, but what could have happened. And if what could have happened did happen, then the outcome would have been different. I mean, what a fascinating situation. So I'll restate this one more time. Instead of interacting with the reality, it's an interaction with what the reality should have been if the past was different. Instead of interacting with reality, it's an interaction with what the reality could have been if the past was different. It's not present at all. It's only present with the mind's construction. And the mind can do whatever it wants. The mind can go into the past, the mind can go into the future, the mind can make up anything, anything. It's incredible. It's the wildest thing. But so that's a little bit about the predictive mind. Sitting with the predictive mind, sitting with the predictive mind of others, recognizing what for them is a really, really powerful narrative. It's a very powerful narrative because what it does is it maintains the story that they're familiar with. It maintains the story, and it also maintains a distance between the realities of all the planning ultimately fell apart. And what really came together was the team working well together, adapting well together. The team adapting well together has some ambiguity to it. It's hard to kind of pinpoint how to adapt and interact as a team really, really well. It's also, I think for a lot of people, it's also hard to interact with a sense of non-form, right? A sense of formlessness. Because if you say that plans and structures and all this other kind of stuff have a flaw to them, and that flaw is that as soon as you engage, that plan disappears, then that's like a willingness to go into the unknown, a willingness to participate with that sense of we can plan as hard as we want, but we just don't really know what's going to happen. That's a little bit scarier. So it's a lot easier to say, well, yeah, okay, that went fine. But you know what? If we had planned better, then this wouldn't have happened. And, that's what we got to do. We just got to plan better. So here's how we plan better, right? And if other people don't think that's the way, that's their problem. Here's what I need. Here's what we need to plan better. So this self is centered around a mental construction that is not based off of the thing on the ground. It's based off of what the person has come up with in their own mind. It's incredible. It's really wild. So how do we hack that? How do we interact with that? One, we interact with it with radical equanimity. That's what we talked about before. We interact with it by being totally present with the understanding that that's what's happening. You don't fight it. You don't say they're wrong. That's not quite true because I kind of did that. It's participating with that, contending with that reality is what the practice is all about. And so, when I was contending with that reality yesterday, I felt the resistance from the people, I should say. I felt their resistance to it. I felt my body's reaction to their resistance. I felt the internal world, the kind of the flutter, the challenge, the boom of all that going on. And the key thing that I was able to kind of maintain was just not being a jerk, not being not being insulting. The idea with this kind of stuff is not to fix the problem, it's to continue to have the conversation. That's the key piece. It's this, you got to grow as a team in the face of this conversation, in the face of these realities. And the way to do it is really this practice, because what the practice does is the practice creates the distinction between the mind settling into the present moment, recreating that childlike state, coming into the present moment, getting out of the narratives of the mind, getting out of the predictive processing of the brain, and getting into just that simple present moment experience of what you really are underneath all the layers. So once you get to that little place, you start to recognize, oh, that's a layer. Oh, that's a layer. Oh, that's a layer. And so those layers become things that you're aware of, not things that you're attached to. And that's what we do. And they can show up in different ways. You can show up in your sensorial environment. It can show up in your body. It can show up in your emotions. It can show up in your heart. And so by the 4 bells, each time you recognize this layer, boom, 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 boom. Each time you practice it, all of a sudden, this is now a layer that you're familiar with. And not just the familiarity with the layers, you're also familiar with the thing that recognizes the layers, the awareness itself. And that's the hack. That's the piece. That's the piece. It's that awareness. If you can get to awareness and recognize all the layers on top of it, then you have choice. You have agency. Oof. I threw a lot at you this morning. My bad. But let's kind of like settle it all down with practice. World around you. Sound. Movement of air. Temperature. Smell. Taste in the mouth. Get to the body. Ground. What's beneath you. Pelvis. Move it around. Base of the spine. Core. Heart space. Throat. Top of the head. Whole spine. Length of the spine. Softness of everything else. Spine is long and upright. Everything else just kind of is in an organized rest around the spine. Third bell. Full breath in, up, take it up. Exhale, feel the body settle down. Full breath in, forward at the belly, send belly out, breathe in. Exhale slow, feel belly button pull in. Keep exhaling. Keep exhaling. Feel belly condense. Keep exhaling. 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 Squeeze the inside. Exhale. 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 Breathe in slow. Keep breathing in. Get to the top. Get to the top. Top off more. Top off more. Relax shoulders. Top off more. 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 Top off more and hold. Notice inner world. Notice pressure. Exhale slow. Sit with breath. Let breath return to normal. Notice normal breath. Notice what inner world feels like around breath. Just sit. Still as you can be. Quiet as you can be. Just sitting in the moment. Aware of sound, aware of thought, aware of breath, aware of body. Whatever pops up, just notice it, but stay open. Not connecting to any particular form. Resting without form. So in a sense of formless rest. You're the awareness. You're resting in the awareness of the things that are showing up. You're the emptiness, aware of the forms showing up around you, the forms in the form of sound, the forms in the form of thoughts, the forms in the form of body. As those pop up, you recognize them and then disappear back into the emptiness of awareness itself, the formlessness. Go forth, Bell. Now, from formlessness, you add the intention. So intention is the coloring of the moment. So an intention isn't an outcome. An intention is a coloring of emptiness. And so in fourth bell, we're taking that formless element of the human experience, love or compassion, and we're kind of giving it a color, an expression, a vibrancy. Emptiness by itself is empty. Emptiness expressed as love or patience has a fullness to it. It's a little bit of a paradox, how emptiness can become something. So fourth bell, we're going to turn the quiet presence, the emptiness of radical equanimity, the emptiness of projecting, the emptiness from identification. We're going to turn that simply into an expression of love and kindness. And so just think of something you love. It could be another person. It could be an aspect of your own self. It could be an animal. It could be nature. It could be something material. What I want you to do is in your mind, I just want you to repeat the phrase, I love you, over and 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 over again. So I'll give you an example of what it sounds like with my voice, but what I want you to do is do this in your head and just have the intention of the visual of the thing that you want to project the love towards, and then the repetition of the phrase, I love you. So in your mind, it would be something like this. I love you, 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 I love you. I love you, 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 I'm running out of air, I love you, 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 I love you. Whew. Finish up with 2 breaths. All right. Thanks for practicing with me. See you later, Armor Down.